Hi, my name's Erwin, and this is the Poetry Lighthouse podcast. In today's episode, I had the pleasure to interview the book cover designer Suzanne Dean, who will take us through some of her most popular works and her creative process. Hello, first of all.
Hello.
Thank you so much for giving me the time for this interview. So first, can you please introduce yourself briefly and tell us what took you into the book cover industry?
Okay. Well, my name is Suzanne Dean. I'm creative director at Vintage Penguin Random House UK. I've been there for quite a while now, and chance took me into publishing, really. I had left my degree, which was in graphic design, and I was working in a general design company, and it wasn't really that exciting. I was a little bit frustrated by it. Um, Let me see. So we worked on brochures and print material and packaging for food, and it was very predictable. And I knew that I had to do something about a change when I designed this. In my memory, it's amazing, but it probably wasn't. And it was a Gustav Klimt rich and creamy yogurt for a supermarket. And I was very excited by this, had lots of gold swirls around fruit and things. And I was told by the supermarket that it was too exciting, too adventurous. And I just knew this wasn't for me. And coincidentally, just at the same time, there was a evening where lots of people who'd left the degree, I suppose we had been out a year and a half, I got together. And there one evening was an illustration professor, and he had heard there was a job going at Penguin. And he said to me, well, I know what could be perfect for you. And I suppose everyone knew that I was into reading and I was into theatre and things like that. And so, yeah, I was given a phone number. I rang up. I said, I'm interested. I got an interview. Then I got a second interview. And then I went from a junior designer at this general design company to a senior designer at Penguin. I'd never done a book cover before. I had all this incredible sort of things to take on and learn, and it was such a steep learning curve, but I've never looked back. You know, where you just find your place and you know it's right, and the excitement of a book cover. I can still remember it now, that and just the first time I went into a bookshop and saw the first design that I'd done in a bookshop. I still go in now and slightly tempted to rearrange shelves in people's bookshops. But yeah, it's great feeling when you know you found your place,
That must have
and
been
it's
quite amazing. What would
yeah.
you say it's the biggest challenge that you encounter when you first started?
Technology, completely different way of designing, different computers, different Macs than I'd been used to using. I'd had to have training in creating artwork. I'd had somebody in the last company I'd been at artworking my designs, so I had to learn how to do that. And actually, just the structure of a book and thinking, okay, so that's separate to the spine, and you see that separately. It took me quite a while to actually just click and to know what I was doing, and then it was like rolling down a hill. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. So, did you always want to, I don't know, so you were like artistic from the beginning? Were you looking for something artistic in your career, or has it
Yes.
never crossed your mind?
No, I'd always wanted to do something in art, and that's why I ended up in an arts degree, even though I sort of studied science side by side with it. But I was just too taken with art and drawing, and it took all my spare time, and I was always doodling or things from my imagination, drawing them up. And when I was a student, it was either book covers or it was posters for films or the theatre. And so I suppose that's why that professor knew that it was a match for me. I thought, I
Mhm.
mean, what a chance in life to have
Yeah,
that happen, and fast tracked suddenly in my career by chance in a different direction. It's amazing. I'm very, very lucky.
yeah.
Definitely.
Life works in mysterious ways.
It does work in mysterious ways. There's no doubt about it.
And would you say this is your passion, or would you consider this more like a job? How do you treat it?
Well, yes, it's a passion. Definitely. I spend a lot of extra time at my Mac, my own personal time developing projects. And that is because uh, as I run a department, so I have quite a lot of managing people and management stuff, and that takes away from my design time. So my passion pulls me back on my own spare time to make up for that, what I'm missing. And actually, design does take a long time. It's not instantaneous to create a book cover. Um, so I have to find that time. But I am working for other people, so it is a job as well. It's not just
Mhm.
like I'm an artist, if you know what I mean.
Well, I guess you got both. That's great. Uh, How many people are usually actually involved in the process of the making of the book cover?
Hmm. Um, well, quite a lot. I mean, I have a team of 9 people, and so I'm the creative director. I've got a deputy, I've got a studio manager who keeps the all the sort of managerial things like invoices and briefs and things like that going round and through the process. I have a picture editor who finds pictures for the books where it's appropriate. And then the rest of the team are designers at different levels of their career. And so that's the design team. So, shall I talk you through how a book comes into process? Is
Oh,
that what you
please.
like?
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be great. Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, it's the author, of course, that writes the manuscript, and the editor that buys the book. And so that editor will present the book at a cover meeting and brief it probably about 11 months before the book is due to be published. So I work way, way ahead of like when the book is printed and arrives in my hand. And the idea that the editor has, or the author indeed has, for the book cover is talked about at the cover meeting, and everyone discusses it who's there and part of the briefing process. And then it's design's turn, and we have to come up with some ideas, a mood board where we talk to the editor, and then create a cover, perhaps within 8 weeks maximum. And then I'm presenting the covers back to the cover meeting. And so at the cover meeting, you'll have the MD of Vintage, the deputy MD, you'll have the editor there, the head of sales, the head of marketing, and you have to have approval from all those people. Then once that visual's okayed and any tweaks that they feel are necessary are made, then it gets sent to the author and their agent, and hopefully you get a big thumbs up from them. And then once that's okayed, we know that's going to be the cover. The cover then goes to editorial and marketing, and they start to get all the things that they need ready for the publication of the book. So marketing will do their bit. They might use the cover as part of all the stuff that they produce that surrounds the book. And then publicity start on building a campaign around the book as well from the publicity point of view. And then sales are selling it into the bookshops. So you can see it's a huge cycle of work that happens. And
Yeah.
at the same time, the editor is editing the book, the author is making corrections, the book is being set by the printers. So there's loads of people involved. It's huge.
Right. It's interesting how they communicate with each other in order to make this book happen, because you
Exactly.
have these meetings with different people from different areas of the
Yeah,
book, and they all have to
exactly.
agree so that you come with this unique, this single product, and
Yes.
you all contributed to that. That's
Yes, at
amazing.
different stages. It's a bit like a sort of web where we're
Mhm.
working of, over each other at different points, different groups of people to make the book happen. Yeah.
That must be exciting. You have to have this kind of collective, kind of teamwork uh,
Yeah.
ethic.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And there's different buy-ins and different, so I'm trying to respond to the essence of a manuscript and the author's thoughts, words, and try to make that a visual interpretation of the essence of it. And I hope what I create gets a positive response at that meeting, because obviously that's where it starts to gather momentum.
yeah, and I think, I mean, covers are really important because it's what catches the
Mm.
attention, and that's why people when they go to a bookshop, it's the first thing they kind of judge, which is
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
I wonder how you come up with these ideas for the book covers because sometimes we have different
Mm.
types of inspiration, and it might be different from time to time and from book to book and or project. But I was wondering if you have like a specific sort of
Yeah, well, it's
inspiration.
interesting. I think lots of people work in different ways, and I always think I have to respond to the text, and that's the most important thing for me. And that's what makes then a book cover individual and a jigsaw with the book. It's sort of a piece, and that if you're responding to trends too much and you're being influenced too much by what's out there, I think it's a disaster, because we work so far ahead that if you are too influenced by what's out there already, by the time a book comes out 11 months later, the trend's moved on. It doesn't make any sense. And I'd much rather feel like I'm giving back to the author and I'm responding to their text and being true to it. And that's what makes a design individual, and you know, it shows that you're caring about the book. I mean, obviously I want to also take on board what sells best for the book and what's happening there, but I still want to make it unique and try to grab attention that way. So there's a balance, I think. It's not about copying somebody, it's about being unique, but also being aware of what it's going to sit within in
So
the
you would
bookshop.
have, would you say you have to have some sort of connections with the marketing team so that you can have like this constant feedback on what's the
Well,
best way?
that's the so this when they brief the book, they will have an idea of what they feel the book should would be sitting amongst, and so you get an idea there what's out there at the moment. But so many books published by the time that book comes out, it's just an awareness, and that's what the brief does. That's part of what the brief does. And so when I'm looking for inspiration, I look at the artist's words. That's my first place of call. And then I'm really I feel it's so important for designers to get out there and see things and be inspired by the world. And so I really encourage sketchbooks, making notes, taking photographs. I mean, the mobile phone is fantastic because you've always got it with you. So if you see a piece of graffiti that's brilliant, or a poster, or you see something that inspires you in a museum, and my team and I, we take turns to go out and surprise each other with exhibitions that we think everyone will benefit from. And you can guarantee that, you know, it might be 6 months later, but somebody will take what they've seen and what's been exciting, and something will pop up in a design that's part of, you know, a wonderful piece of painting. It might just be the colors that's been inspiring, or a piece of pottery, you know. So that's where I encourage, and I would say to any designer who wants to do book covers, that's where you should, you know, sort of aim your inspiration, your starting points.
Great. To focus on the content itself, like the words, how the the feeling, because when you read a book, you have this kind of
Yeah.
feeling. Is it like a horror story? If it's like a sort of romantic, or if it's a fast paced or action. So
Yeah.
once you have once you kind of define what type of book this is, then you have to think about what are the well, the targeted audience, of course, but you also want to make it non-generic. You want to make it unique.
Exactly.
So
Yes,
that's where
unique.
the
And
challenge
it's
comes
the
in.
tone of the words, the tone of the book. Where is it taking you? How much do you give away on the cover? How much do you suggest? How much do you ask the reader to think about it and go, ah, afterwards?
Yes,
There's
because sometimes,
subtle things.
oftentimes you read a book and it's until you finish reading the book that you understand why the cover is
Yes.
this way,
And
right?
there's a sort of you can have a smile in the mind. Do you know what I mean by that? So that you're afterwards, the person who's looking at it goes, aha, you know, there's that click, which is part of that involvement in, you know,
Yes.
you're part of it then. It's a participatory kind of thing.
I have two covers that you've designed.
Mhm.
This one is On Earth with We're Briefly Gorgeous,
Yes.
Ocean Vogue, and also Norwegian Wood, which I haven't read this one yet, but I have read this one and it was fantastic. I loved the book, and I particularly liked this cover
Mhm.
because when I saw it in the bookshelves, it kind of shines a little bit. It has like
Mm.
this stars and the the font, the letters that are for the title, they're also a little bit kind of they gleam a little bit, and the contrast between this lightness of the words that are kind of almost in white against the background, which is like very dark, it really
Mm.
reminds me of looking at the stars. And I thought that was really beautiful. It's like looking at like a tree during the night, and that
Yeah,
it's very poetic. And I think that definitely kind of matches the tone of the author, because the author is a poet as
amazing.
well himself.
It's
Amazing
amazing.
poet.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I really like this
It's so
poet.
beautiful, the writing, isn't it? It's so
Yes,
lyrical. I thought the book was incredible. Um, I'm thinking
must
back
be.
to
Yeah.
when I designed it. I went quickly to my shelves. Have you seen the hardback? Which I'm that's part of my painting on there, dropped in, and it was didn't have the stars, but it had quite a rich colours and unusual, a bit of punch to it. And originally when I read it, I was thinking I would do there's some um, bits where he talks about butterflies. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
And but then the editor said that he didn't want butterflies on the cover. So I was trying to think what would work, and the sort of the feel of the temporary leaves on a tree and how they fall, and it seemed to fit the title, about being sort of briefly gorgeous.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's where that came from. And then you're thinking about the paperback when you sort of take it onto a slightly different a different tone for the paperback, hence the sort of little tiny touches of silver. What could I bring to it that was slightly different but similar? That still had all those keynotes that people might recognize if they hadn't been able to buy the hardback, but in your head, oh yeah, that's that cover. I remember
Yeah.
that. So yeah, and it does then, and those little stars were put there to sort of wave at you in the bookshop and
Yes,
say,
it
call
is
you
works.
Susan.
It is quite different. It's very different from other covers that I've seen, especially I think because this would be considered more like in the realm of
It's at all.
autobiographical, maybe.
Yeah, it's autobiography, but it's done in a very lyrical, poetic way, and
Yes.
it's fiction too. So yeah, I mean it treads various very different
Yeah.
sort of roads, but um certainly I've had a very good response to the cover.
Mm.
Uh yeah, and the author liked the cover a lot, so that's always nice.
That's amazing. So you got in touch with the author as well.
Actually, I think it was the editor who sent the design over, and then very often if they're overseas, or they're not local and you don't know them, you will get an email back in a response, and it was very positive. So it's always nice when the author likes a cover. Makes
That's
a huge
wonderful.
difference.
Yes, yes, indeed. It must be exciting also to see the creation, the cover that you've created in the bookshelves when
Yeah.
people come in and you can see it, because it's not this is a book that you can find in the very first aisles of the
Yes.
bookstores. It's a very popular book at the moment.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it must be really exciting to see it in most places to be
Yes. I can't not get excited about seeing all the books that you've worked on. You just think, oh, that's so lovely. People are interested and it's worked. And part of that excitement is thinking that lots of people are buying it and enjoying the work. I mean, that's part of my job. So it's an important part, selling the book.
This was the first part of our interview with Suzanne Dean. Please click on the next episode to listen to the second part. Thank you for listening to the Poetry Lighthouse. If you liked this episode, don't forget to share and subscribe to our podcast. You can also visit our website, thepoetrylighthouse.com, where you can read and submit your works of poetry and short stories. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram to keep updated. This is the end of the episode. Thanks again, and see you next time.